Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, everyone, and welcome to another series of our Survivor Leadership webinar. Today's series, we will talk a little bit about accessing to banking for survivors. Before we start, I would like to hand over the mic to our co-sponsor, Nancy Iswola from Survivor Alliance, a survivor-led organization.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Roxy. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. My name is Nancy Esiwa, as Roxy has said, and I am the membership coordinator for Survivor Alliance. Survivor Alliance is an international US-based not-for-profit organization created by and for survivors of slavery and human trafficking. Survivor Alliance, our majority of our board and staff member, most of them are survivors. And obviously we take people, we take survivor into Survivor Alliance who self-identify as a survivor. So we do not check like how people being a survivor. So we do so many things as Survivor Alliance. Most of the things that we do, just to give you a tip, I know I don't have a long time. So we do meaningful inclusion, and this is engaging with survivors, engaging with NGOs, having different platforms where survivors do connect together. And we have a well-being session as well, and we do economy empowerment. And under economy empowerment, we do consulting opportunity, professional development, employment pathway. And with that being said, we pass the mic back to Rossi. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I would like to give some more information in regards to some housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. We will also share recording on our YouTube channel shortly after the webinar ends. If you would like to ask a question, please use the question and answer box at the bottom right hand of your screen. You can also use the chat box if you would like to agree or comment on something that one of the presenters have stated. In addition, we will also send out the PowerPoint in an email to all of the participants or to those who would like a copy of it who haven't attended. You guys can request it as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our co-hosts or presenters for this evening. Today, we will be talking about access to banking and the difficulties that can occur when survivors attempt to get bank accounts. So without further ado, Tasha. Hi, Tasha.
Hello, Roxy.
Hi, Tasha. Tasha is a survivor and will be giving us a little bit more information in reference to her experience with banking as a survivor. Tasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Tasha. I am a human trafficking survivor, and I have joined on with Sarah through her programming at her law firm.
Thank you. Thank you, Tasha. And before I bring up the PowerPoint, I would also like to introduce Sarah Byrne. She's going to be one of our presenters, and she's also a pro bono attorney. Sarah, would you like to give more information about yourself?
Sure. While you pull up the slide, first of all, thank you so much to the Human Trafficking Legal Center and to Martina and Roxy, you all in particular, for inviting us to join with you today. As you'll hear, Tasha and I have worked on several matters and projects together, but this is our first opportunity to co-present in this way. So I'm really, really excited about it. Tasha, as you'll hear from her, has taught me so much about survivorship and resilience and how to best use legal tools to seek justice and healing. So I'm really honored to be working with her. So I'm gonna flip it back to Tasha to introduce herself in a bit more detail.
Like I said before, I am a human trafficking survivor. My name is Tasha. I am a mother and I am a daughter, and above all else, I am a survivor. I come from Idaho. I have a bit of a mixed background. I do connect with Native American roots and Japanese American roots as well. I was referred to Sarah in 2017 after I was able to escape trafficking. And from there together, we were able to get my record expunged from all of my criminal charges that I incurred while being trafficked. She also was able to help me in getting custody of my children, and we were able to kind of have an estate planning going. And she's also played a huge role in just giving public access and to other benefits. And the major one that I'm very proud of is getting prosecutors and just the legal system to see that our worth and our value is a lot more. And that's seen through our restitution that was ordered to me through I want to say my court case and with the sentencing of my trafficker. And Sarah will be able to go into a bit more detail about that.
So I'll tell you a little bit more about the work that we do here at the Human Trafficking Pro Bono Project and some other synergies that Taushia and I have with regard to financial inclusion. So I am a lawyer with a firm called Morin Van Allen, and I lead the firm's Human Trafficking Pro Bono Project. And I also work with organizations who are looking to develop programs to prevent human trafficking and to comply with related law and regulation. So we built the Trafficking Project in 2013 after realizing there weren't a lot of organizations that set out to provide comprehensive legal services to survivors. Certainly there weren't any in our area, and we wanted to fill that gap. We set out to do that, and we've done it. And since opening our doors, we've represented 245 survivors in 326 matters as of yesterday. In our experience, survivors' legal needs really fall into three major categories, and we've had the opportunity to assist in all of these. The first one, as Taushia had mentioned, is expunction and vacatur of criminal records. The second, which Taushia and I worked on together as well, is victim witness representation in the criminal matter against the trafficker, all the way from the investigative stage through to restitution and having a voice at the sentencing hearing and even thereafter. And then the third bucket is kind of what I describe as everything else, which includes helping them with child custody. You heard Taushia and I had worked on that together, name changes, immigration assistance, all the way to, we've done some corporate formation and tax work for survivors. So it really runs the gamut, and we don't say no. We will find an attorney or other legal professional that can assist with whatever the need may be. We also work with organizations, mostly financial institutions, to provide trainings and to help them develop their anti-trafficking programs. Recently, we've spent a fair amount of time engaging in legislative advocacy at both the state and federal level to advocate for law that would better enhance survivor support and prosecutions. Some examples are, as many of you may have heard of, the Debt Bondage Repair Act, which is before the United States Senate now to help with credit restoration of survivors, and also a federal vacatur bill that would help with post-conviction relief for federal records. I want to mention two collaborations, and they really touch on a lot of the work that Taushia and I have done together. The first is the National Survivor Law Collective, which is a collection really of law firms and lawyers, either legal aid, nonprofit, or private attorneys that provide pro bono, free legal representation to survivors. So keep that organization in mind if you or someone you're working with has a legal need in another geographic area and you are unable to identify a pro bono there. And the other collaboration is what we call the Pro Bono Triage, and that's the program that launched the credit repair work that we do. Triage is a collaboration of large banks and other corporations and their in-house legal departments and law firms that come together to fill a gap in need through volunteerism. My firm has partnered with Wells Fargo to lead the human trafficking area focus for Triage, and that's what's led to the development of our credit repair program. That program is just really, and you'll hear a lot of, because we'll be talking about access to banking, it was a natural extension of our work because we just were hearing from so many of our survivor clients that they had bad credit, that they needed assistance with addressing some of the accounts so that they could access financial services without the detriment of having poor credit status. That combined with having an army of financial services professionals that really wanted to engage and support survivors. So it really was a natural fit. And I know that the Survivor Leadership Series has had a program on credit repair, and it was very well done. So I'm so pleased to see that this series is focusing on so many of these issues. So with regard to financial inclusion, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next slide. We're going to switch to what's called the Liechtenstein Initiative's Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking Initiative. It's a lot. In 2019, we call it FAST, which is Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking, published its blueprint on how financial institutions can best fight trafficking, but also support survivors. There are several areas of focus, and you can see them listed on the PowerPoint. But in my mind, one of the most important pieces of this recommendation is what is called the Survivor Inclusion Initiative. The Survivor Inclusion Initiative, which I may refer to as SII, is a program that allows survivors to have access to banking services and products without the barriers that they may otherwise face. My firm is what we call a referring survivor support organization, as is the Human Trafficking Legal Center and many other organizations that I know are represented in the audience. As a referring agency, I work with the steering committee of FAST to provide feedback on the experience of the banks, on the experience of the survivors, and as a referring service provider, what that experience is like and what we can all do in the community to enhance survivor engagement, bank engagement, and most of all, to make sure that the experience for the survivor is as easy and accommodating as possible. So what does this process look like? How would a survivor become banked? How could they access banking services through the SII? It goes like this, and it is intentionally, hopefully, a simple and easy process. A participating referring service support organization, again, like my firm or the Human Trafficking Legal Center and so many others, would refer the survivor interested in financial services to one of the participating banks, and you can see the list of some of the participating banks on the screen, whichever one would be the choice of the survivor. And that decision can be based on convenience, maybe prior positive experience, or whatever the reason may be. You would get to choose the bank that you would like to avail yourself to seek services through SII. The referring service provider then provides documentation that that specific bank requires to onboard the survivor. And that could be called many different things, but one could be a service provider attestation that says, you know, at Moore and Van Allen, I support this survivor in their needs and they would like to be referred for banking services. It could also be a victim verification letter from an agency such as a law enforcement agency, but that's certainly not a requirement. The Department of Labor could provide a victim verification letter. And again, every bank has their own process for onboarding a survivor. And it really is a work in progress to develop these programs. So I'm really interested to hear later or after today feedback from any of you about how we can make this process easier. So to date, over 2,000 SII accounts have been opened globally. But FAST is working really hard to improve the process and increase engagement here in the US. And that's through a couple of ways. That's through educating the banks on the regulatory requirements, what they can do to onboard, and what would be permitted for identification and other things like that to make there less red tape, honestly. And also what banks can do to make it more accommodating and comfortable and accessible to survivors. So again, it's a work in progress, and we're really hoping to get some feedback on how to improve it. I think everyone on this call, if you're on this call, you agree that access to banking services is key to financial security. So that leads me to hand it back over to Taushia, who was my very first SII referral. And it's been a really wonderful process to watch both Taushia and the bank learn about how best to structure their relationship. So I'm going to let her tell you about that experience. And when she's doing that, I hope she'll share with you her feelings about banks and banking, her relationship with money, how it may have changed, and just her feelings about access to financial services, either in the past or now, or where she hopes to be in the future. So we'll flip the slide and turn it over to Taushia.
Thank you, Sarah. So and during my trafficking situation, I didn't have the greatest experience with banking. I had very little understanding and knowledge of how finances worked. I also seen money more or less as a way to control. It was very much an evil thing in regards to going through this. And now I am more seeing money as a tool than rather a weapon. Sarah helped me refer me to the Survivor Inclusion Initiative, and I decided to become a member with Wells Fargo just due to my personal experience with the bank prior to being trafficked, and even after. They were very helpful, and they also helped close my account when they seen suspicious activities on my accounts prior to even having knowledge of what was going on. And they're very just personable towards me. I was able to set up an account through Wells Fargo, and during that time, I was still learning about finances. My account that I needed was more for money orders with no charges, and to be able to, you know, deposit and withdraw wherever I may be. My account auto closed because I had a revolving financial thing that was being pulled out of my account that I didn't understand. And so it did close, but I was able to reach out to the bank and to Sarah, and they were able to help me come back together. And we are now currently trying to set back up an account that is going to fit my needs the best. And through this, I was able to gain a financial literacy training book through Megan Lundstrom. And she's helped with, you know, budgeting, and I'm learning how to properly budget. And I'm also learning how to disassociate the trauma from the, I am able to maintain that. And it's also just given me a better outlook on how things are, and just a better understanding of finances in the world that we live in, because it is very crucial that we have an understanding of this. Sarah, is there anything else you feel like you would like to add to this?
Let's flip the slide, because I want to continue on this topic of financial literacy. I just want to say that I am so grateful to Taushia for so many reasons. And as I said, we both learned a lot together through this. I was in the early stages of my work with this intersection with financial services and survivorship. I was really focused on credit repair, because that's what was being presented to me as needs from survivors. But really, it's Taushia's the one that taught me that financial literacy piece really has to go part and parcel with credit restoration, rebanking, all of that. So again, I keep saying that I'm grateful to all she's taught me, but I am now ever more focused on financial literacy than I was doing this work. So I'm glad that we're talking about it today. And I'm so glad that you gave a shout out to Megan's book, which I'm hopeful a lot of survivors and survivor advocates on the call have heard of it or aware of it, have it, because it's an extraordinary tool. And Taushia's done a great job working with it and using it just as Megan would hope that a survivor would. And she's just, you know, learning so much day by using it. So there are a couple of other opportunities for financial literacy. And this is really, I think, a growing area that's just getting a lot of attention right now. And as I said, the Human Trafficking Legal Center has really done a fair amount of programming on it. So they're, of course, the epicenter on what's most needed with regard to trafficking. So that just shows you that this is kind of the issue of the day, as we say. But what's up on the screen is Bank of America as an SII, Survivor Inclusion Initiative participating bank, as part of their financial inclusion programming, developed some documentation to help provide this kind of education. It's part of a larger program that they have with regard to financial inclusion. And the screenshots you see, of course, are just a snippet of the materials that they've brought together to help. But I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that education was out there. And I think many of you are probably aware of the great work from organizations like Free From that helps with access to banking and better banking for crime victims and victims of intimate partner violence and trafficking. The Avery Center, of course, through Megan, focuses on this work. I mentioned the Human Trafficking Legal Center, and Polaris, of course, has put out a lot of information about financial inclusion. So I'm just so glad that as a community, we're all focusing on this issue, because if we, as I said before, I think we all agree that financial security is the only way to really seek justice and healing for so many survivors. So we really need to put a lot of resources towards it. And the goals overall, and certainly what we're hearing from FAST, is to just make sure that survivors who want to have access to banking services and products have it in a barrier-free way and in a way that works best for them. You heard Taushia talk about having to decide which kind of account would work best for her based on her lifestyle and income and all of that. So it really is a survivor-specific decision, and working with the bank and whether a case manager or other advocate that can help guide these decisions. Certainly my goals in doing this work are to avoid debanking of survivors, exclusion of any financial services, and again, to connect these dots between service providers, survivors, and organizations like FAST to make this work really well. As I've mentioned before, we'd love to hear feedback from any of you, either today on the chat or as a follow-up. And certainly I'm hoping that there may be some survivors or advocates on the call that want to begin to be onboarded by one of the banks and are looking for a referral. I'm kind of hoping that I'm going to spend the rest of today and tomorrow connecting survivors to referring organizations and banks. So please do reach out. On the last side, you'll see our contact information. So certainly feel free to email me. But that I'm gonna put it back on Taushia just for a minute to see if there's anything else you wanted to share about your experiences, either with money or through the process of just being an incredible advocate for yourself and accessing what's been important to you and what's been most effective and powerful throughout the years.
Yeah, so my biggest thing was just the fact that I had to acknowledge money as one of my triggers, because it was a trigger, and it was a trigger for a very long time. But being able to see that I also have financial freedom in itself. I have the freedom to be able to choose where I go with my money. I have the ability to choose who I trust with my money, withholding it, and knowing that I will be the only one that has access to my money and no one else can take that from me. That's been really huge. And I've been able to heal with the fact that I am in control of my money. Just the fact that the guide to, the survivor's handbook has really helped come along the healing process of this. Been very helpful that I've had a great support team and people that have come alongside of me to be able to show me and kind of help, guide me in, the proper ways to handle and manage money. And I'm able to budget and maintain a life that, I didn't feel I was going to be able to coming out of my trafficking situation, because money was used to control us in a very negative way. And money can be very liberating and free. Sarah, is there anything else you would like to add as well?
No, I was just going to make a joke that everyone probably knows why I always pass the mic back to you now, because you have such a powerful voice.
Well, thank you, Sarah.
Well, at this point, I say we flip it to our contact information, and I'm hoping, Roxy, that maybe there's some questions that either Taushia or I can answer.
Yes. Thank you. I would like to say thank you, Sarah and Taushia, for all the information that you've provided today. It looks like our questions are coming in. Let's see, we have a few questions. Bear with me while I pull them up.
I'm going to mention something, Roxy, while you're getting organized with the questions. I hope I've relayed the theme that the hope is that the bank account can really accommodate the survivor. And again, this is a work in progress, but Their Ally Bank, Ally Financial, is an organization that's a really unique financial services company, that they are not brick and mortar banks. So you don't go into a branch to make a deposit. It's all online. We have found that that can be really attractive to some survivors for a variety of reasons. For some, it can be exclusive and it just wouldn't work best for the way that they manage their money and the way that, their lifestyle. But I wanted to offer that because that's not maybe evident from the materials, that is an option, this online exclusive option.
Thank you, Sarah. So we have a few questions that are coming in now. The first one is, what is the process like for a service provider to become an SSO?
Very easy, I hope. The FAST, the Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking, has staff that manages the process of onboarding. Honestly, you see my email up on the screen. I think if you're serious about doing it, email me and I will make the connection to FAST to have you onboarded. There is no commitment. Of course, there's no financial commitment. Honestly, there isn't even a memorandum of understanding. There's a document with expectations about what the bank will do to participate in this program, but it's very low commitment is the only way I can describe it. So I'll connect you with FAST, and then hopefully you can join on as a referring service provider. And if so, your timing is great, because this fall FAST is going to have some webinars for new and existing service providers for us all to connect and talk about how we can, just to learn more about how to make referrals and best practices. And so with regard to getting education about how the process looks, I hope I've described it. It's fairly simple, both to become a service provider who can refer, but also to be a survivor who will be onboarded for services. That webinar would hopefully provide that comfort that it is fairly straightforward. But anyway, the timing is great. So I'll expect an email from you, but otherwise the FAST initiative does have a website, and I'm sure that there's contact information on that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question is, looks like I work from a safe house and banks usually want the survivor's address. We try not to give the address out and don't have a business office address locally. Is there a suggestion you have, or a company that can provide an alternate address, or another idea to get around this issue if possible?
I would like to answer this question if that is okay. I hold my safety very valuable. There's a program called the Address Confidentiality Program, and that is the program that I use. It's through the district attorney's office, and they provide us with a safe address. And I look into what you have around your area, but here in North Carolina, I do know that that is what is provided, and that is actually accepted at the DMV. That's what can be put on my driver's license. That's what I've used for my bank account. It's what I've used for, my children's schools. So I would highly look into seeing if you have an address confidentiality program for that.
Thank you, Tasha. That was great information. Next question. Are your services available locally within the US as well as internationally?
I'm not sure if the attendee is asking about, here I went through all those different programs that we're involved in. So I'll just generally respond. My firm's pro bono program generally serves survivors who are in the Southeast. However, if we are working with a survivor that is based in our area and has a legal need in another part of the country or world, we will find local counsel to help. But my suspicion is maybe we're talking about the FAST program, which is, because that's a topic today about banking, that is a global program. And I have encouraged people to go to the FAST initiative website and to go under the tab titled Survivor Inclusion Initiative and see where the program is active. So yes, that's certainly a global program. The credit restoration program, that's part of the triage, it is local in that our volunteers are here, but we continue to get requests from survivors across the country looking for credit restoration help. So I'm hoping that this will grow to a larger scale so that we and other organizations can provide credit restoration services, and many already are, but so that we can, meet the need wherever it is. But if we currently don't have the ability or capacity to meet the need, we'll work hard to find someone in that area that would.
Thank you, Sarah. Next question. Does every branch of the banks listed participate in providing banking services for survivors?
That's a great question, and I don't know the right answer. And I will say, I should have said this before, the way that each participating bank manages the program is really different, which I think is kind of a neat part of the program. It's really, it's kind of left to the banks to manage it. And of course, they seek guidance from FAST and stakeholders, and there's a lot of survivor voice that goes into it, but they do handle it differently. So I haven't worked with every bank that's on the list, so I can't answer with certainty. But when I have tried to refer a survivor to an area a geographic area of which I don't have a contact or don't know if they work, they have been able to accommodate that. So I want to say yes, with the caveat that I don't know for sure with each bank, but the intention is to make banking services accessible no matter where in the world a survivor is. So any branch really, I would think, would be able to participate, but we'd have to find out for sure with regard to each bank.
Thank you, Sarah. These are some great questions, Sarah. You have a few more. Is there a way to have my social security number changed without losing my credit score?
So that's a challenging question, and we've gotten it from time to time. And this is not my area of expertise, I will say. So I won't provide any advice on that now. But if you wanted to reach out to me, I can refer it to the lawyers that I work with that have done more of that work. I don't want to mischaracterize the process or the impact of doing that. But I know that's really important to a lot of survivors for safety, credit reasons, financial security. So it's an important question, and I hope you'll email it to me.
Thank you. Next question. We tend to work with a lot of survivors who have lost or maybe had their ID stolen. It usually takes forever to get them back, and banks require this. So do you have any ways or any programs that can assist with this?
So I might be sounding like a broken record, but my recommendation is, if you worked through the Survivor Inclusion Initiative, is to have an advocate, or if you're working with a case manager or a lawyer or mentor, to work with the bank to really consider, or ask them to consider, whether or not that identification is required from a regulatory perspective. A lot of times financial institutions have policies that sit on top of what's legally required of them, and they're for good reason, of course. But sometimes we need to challenge whether or not that's a policy that we can affect, or if there's an exception that exists either at the policy level or at the regulatory level, to not have to have that identification. And in my experience in dealing with this, there certainly are some accommodations that can be made with regard to identification.
I also would like to put in just kind of, I was without identification for a while, and a lot of the organizations I've been through have been able to vouch for who I am. And like Sarah said, you really just have to ask, can you just please, kind of pass for the moment? And some of them will allow you to not have immediate identification, but they will ask that you do bring it in after. Social security cards are a bit easier to get. I know they take a longer time to get, but those are a bit easier, or birth certificates, or any piece of paper from like a legal legal advocacy centers usually are what's been able to help me. I've had Sarah write me letters before just to recognize, hey, yes, she's a survivor. She does not have the proper form she needs, but this is who she is. And the fact that she's been able to supply my social security number along with that letter has also helped me bypass that.
Thank you so much, Tasha.
Absolutely.
We have a few more questions. Has there been any consideration of expanding to credit unions? I know credit unions have been used for reaching those who are underbanked or unbanked in areas major banks like that exist.
That's a fabulous question, and one I haven't thought of. I met with a credit union association about a year ago and this did not come up, and now I'm regretting that. And I'm going to follow up on this. I will ask FAST if they have engaged credit unions. Of course, as the attendee had mentioned, credit unions really are known for financial inclusion and making banking services kind of less, more accessible. So that seems like it would be in the spirit of their existing services. But to answer your question with regard to the Survivor Inclusion Initiative, I don't know if credit unions have been engaged, but I will find out.
Thank you. Next question. Are there options for organizations that work with survivors of domestic violence as opposed to trafficking to become an SSO or be able to make those referrals for our client?
I can't answer on behalf of FAST, but I would think certainly any support service provider organization, no matter what the population they serve, could refer, but it would be confined to referring survivors of trafficking. I would think so. And again, I'll just make another plug for Free From that has a sort of a broader populations and crime victim categories that they support with regard to banking services. So they might want to follow up with Free From as well.
Thank you so much. And lastly, our last question of the day. Does your organization assist with student loan cancellations?
Oh, I've never gotten that. So I confess, and I know some of our volunteers who do this work are on the call, and if we could make them public on here, I would do that because they do extraordinary work. But those that help with credit restoration, they've dealt with, debated with, worked with, cooperated with, pushed on all sorts of different types of creditors. I don't know offhand if they have dealt with, student debt or not, so I can't answer that, but that has not come up. But that seems like surely, I'm certain that this has been thought about and considered, and I'm gonna make a note to follow up with those that work in the space to talk about student debt. Certainly would be the type of credit that we would want to address. Now we'd have to, a lot of creditors focus on the connection between the exploitation and the coerced debt. So that might be more of an attenuated circumstance, but our extraordinary volunteers, some of which I already said are on the call, have had great, I've just been in awe about their ability to seek forgiveness and reduction of debts, without having to make the connection between the exploitation and the debt. So it's not out of the question and it deserves more attention. So thank you for raising it.
Oh, questions are still coming in. Are there accounts exclusive for this program? I think what the question is about, does your program work with more than one type of an account, such as savings, checkings, credit?
So the FAST, again, I'm a referring service provider, so I am not part of FAST, but I do communicate with them pretty regularly about the program. It is focused on providing checking and savings accounts, and then it will move on hopefully to credit cards and all of that. Because again, it's a fairly young program. So I'm glad that we're all talking about this now so that we can all work as a community to make it the best it can be. But I do know that there generally is not a specific SII account at each of the participating banks. They each, as I said, they each handle it differently. But I think the good news in that is that, as you heard from Tasha's experience, she's working with the on-the-ground banker to see what would be the best fit based on her needs. So it would, in all likelihood, come from an existing account profile or account type that she would access coming through SII. Does that make sense?
I would like to just add a little bit to this. So I do know through Wells Fargo, they are really trying to figure out what type of accounts we as survivors would need. And they are really trying to put this together so that way it could be a bit more inclusive for us as well. Currently, they have 3 different bank account types. And it's kind of like leveling up with those accounts. You can start with your basic account, and that's kind they feel like is best for us coming out of our trafficking situations and not having a whole lot of understanding of finances. And this is something that, you know, they kind of refer to those that are really just trying to get their foot in the door with just finances. And then they have ones that are more advanced for those who really have a bit more understanding of finances and know how to budget properly. And then they have another one that, you know, is like the premium bank account, which is for everybody. Like all these accounts are for anyone and everybody.
Thank you, Tasha. Let's see, do we have any more? I think those are all the questions. I think so. Let me look for more. I believe that we have a little bit more. Here's one. I do not have anyone to co-sign for me, and a private loan was taken out and the interest rates are very high. What are your suggestions for me? How do I address this issue?
That is tough. I know I feel it probably sounds like I keep punting to the individual banks, but that my recommendation would be to have you participate in SII, connect you with a banker on the ground, and then talk about whether any accommodations could be made, or perhaps they already have exceptions or a program set up. I try to, as Tasha well knows this, I am not a banker myself, and I am terrible with money. No, I'm kidding, but that's not my area of expertise. So I really try to stay in my lane. So I can't provide advice on what type of loan product would be the best fit for you, but I would be happy to facilitate the connection with those who have that professional expertise. This is why I don't even do the credit repair work, because we've got financial services professionals who are much better at that than lawyers might be.
And a follow-up question to that, and this is not her question, but I'm just curious, if she just decided to file for bankruptcy, is that something that will be an option under your program? Can survivors work with your program in reference to bankruptcy? If that's
we have not, yeah, we have not done that today. I can't speak on behalf of FAST, but my law firm, we have not done that to date. We have a large bankruptcy practice where we mostly represent creditors, so we may have a conflict of interest in doing the bankruptcy work, but I would certainly work to try to find someone who could assist in that area, depending on where the individual was.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. Our center is in the process of developing a survivor leadership program. Do you all have any advice or best practices on how to best present this information to our leaders?
Tasha, that's you.
Ooh, advice or best practices for this. I would say that honestly, I'm just starting out on this, but I really would say kind of gather who you're working with now, like who's advocating for you now. You can reach out. There's many programs that would actually love to have survivors included in this. It's just, you've got to do a lot of footwork. Also, Polaris, you can call them and say, hey, do you guys have any programs that are looking for survivor leadership? I know that with my case management, the people that I work with and just working with Sarah, they've really been able to help connect me with those that are looking for survivor leaderships. And that's kind of how I've gotten to this point, is just being able to work through my traumas and make sure I'm working with and I stay with, providers. I have gone through different providers, but just the fact that I've had providers that provide case management, I would say those people would be really the best people to reach out to. Outside of that, I don't know, unless you have any other remarks to that, Sarah.
No, I think, you've talked a lot about the importance of being connected to providers. And I couldn't echo that. Well, I am a provider, and I think that's an important relationship. So of course I think that, but I think Tasha's made tremendous progress in so many of the areas, but so much due to her own leadership over her future. So she's giving a lot of credit to providers, but I don't think she's giving herself enough credit for her self-direction and just goal setting and stopping at nothing to achieve whatever the goal is.
Thank you.
Thank
Sarah.
you so much. And we have a few more minutes. However, I do have a question. Taushia, can you speak more about some of the things that you like about the program and some of the barriers that you first encountered while going through the FAST initiative?
Some of the things that I like the fact that, you know, people are still willing to help, and they see that there is a need for this type of help. I also want to say just the fact that, you know, they've been very personable towards me, very understanding, very kind, and they have really, you know, kind of come around and in a sense, just kind of lifted me up and helped carry me through this while I am going through this myself. Some barriers. I am the first person to start this, so you know I've helped kind of manage through this. There's some mismanagement, I guess, of communication or my understanding of what has been communicated. So I want to say, like, you know, ask questions if you do not understand. That was my biggest thing, is just, you know, voicing up for myself. The barrier really would be myself in it, because sometimes I don't know, like, yeah, I should ask this question, or, you know, it's really just communication. I would say would be a barrier, rather that's on your end or the other party. But you know, and if there is something that we both run into that we do not know, you know, we then refer to FAST, and they are able to come together and say, okay, well, this is what we need to do instead of this, and then they're able to help from that point forward. And they kind of make sure, and they always check up, is there anything else we can do? Is there something that you know, is not being provided that needs to be provided? Just, I feel like they're really just here to help. I don't really see much other barriers.
Thank you so much, Taushia. That was really helpful. I think it's really helpful when we all get more information about what that experience looks like, and then some helpful things that we as survivors can do while we go through this type of process, because it is difficult, especially when you may need to understand something but just don't. And it does take the right relationship with both people as well as the provider.
Yes.
Yes, I want to ask if there are any more questions. I think our questions have slowed down. I don't see any more coming in. Check one more time. I think that's the end of our questions. So before we end the presentation, I want to again thank you, Sarah and Taushia, for joining us today. You guys have provided a lot of great information, and from the questions, it seems very insightful. And I believe that everyone who attended today received a lot of information and new information and learned a lot about the Fashion Initiative. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roxy, and the Human Trafficking Center. Thanks, Taushia.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys have a great one.
All right. As a reminder, thank you, Nancy. As a reminder, I just want to let everyone know that we will follow up with an email with the recording, the PowerPoint presentation that was shared today,
One more question.
as well as the contact information for both presenters. One more question. Let me check.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Taushia, for catching that in the chat. One last question before we leave. So if someone was from another area, how would they go about finding all these programs in a pro bono? So if they aren't from the Southeast portion
So
of the
that's great question. That's why I mentioned the National Survivor Law Collective, which is a national, basically a formal network of attorneys who represent survivors and do this type of work. If you Google National Survivor Law Collective, you'll see a LinkedIn page, but also a website that will have information about it. But again, you have my email address, and we have a listserv. So if you email me and say, I need a family law attorney in Providence, Rhode Island, I can, and if I don't have a contact there, I can send it across the listserv, and it includes those, that we have a relationship with, or, are otherwise trauma informed and trained in doing this work. So that was sort of, I'm glad you asked the question, because we had wanted that for so many years, sort of this national network, so that when we have survivors who have needs in other parts of the country where we don't know anybody or have an advocate or a lawyer on the ground, we can quickly and efficiently access it for the survivor. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Sarah. And I just want to add a quick plug for the Human Trafficking Legal Center. So if you also need a legal referral, you can also reach out to the Human Trafficking Legal Center. And my colleagues can assist you with connecting with Sarah or any other pro bono attorneys that assist in this area. All right, I think that was the last question. And again, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Taushia, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this webinar. And we will see you at the next Survivor Leadership webinar. Have a great day, everyone.